Today, we're going to kick off with two great people who I've been following, in particular, one person for a long time, and then more recently, another who is a rising star, as one would say in public media. Welcome, Vanessa de la Torre. She's a chief content officer at Connecticut Public. As such, her mission is to inform, educate, and inspire diverse audiences on radio, television, and some 60 digital platforms. Since 2020, Vanessa has also led the New England News Collaborative, which is a hub for in-depth journalism by the region's public media stations.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here and to chat with you both.
And welcome Ray Suárez, who is, of course, Ray Suárez. He is one of my personal heroes and an icon in public media. He's the host of the program and podcast On Shifting Ground, produced by Commonwealth Club World Affairs and San Francisco's KQED. Ray is also a prolific writer. His latest book is just out. It covers the modern era of American immigration, and it's titled We Are Home, Becoming American in the 21st Century. His roster of books includes The Latino Americans, the 500-year legacy that shaped a nation. Of course, in 2020, Ray was inducted into the NAHJ Hall of Fame.
Great to be with you.
So we'll start by asking you, from your distinct perspectives, what does it mean today to be a Latino journalist and an NAHJ member in America?
So there's a lot of power, I would say, in being a Latino journalist in America these days. There's a lot of love and compassion and collaboration in being an NAHJ member. And when I talk about the power aspect of being a Latino journalist in America, it's not so much sort of that traditional sense of power and the hierarchy in an organization. It's really about the representation that we bring when people hear us or read our stories or see us on TV. There is so much power in that representation. And it's something that I think about constantly when we think about the strength of our journalism and what we're doing in our newsrooms and how we're serving our communities. Without that representation, we aren't telling the full scope of what's happening in our communities. You know, we bring a unique lens by virtue of our life experiences and how we navigate the world and what we see in front of us. So there's a lot of power that we bring to our newsrooms as Latino journalists. And what's also a reality is that sometimes it's lonely because oftentimes you don't see much of us in newsrooms. And when you do find a newsroom where there is, more than one or several, it's really a special environment, and you could tell. And you can see that in the reporting.
Looking back from where we're sitting today, these have been decades of rapid change in the United States. And looking forward from today, already loaded into the demographic realities of the country, are decades more of rapid change that's going to take us to majority America. A lot of people don't like the phrase, but it's short and it gets you there. And we are defining the country for our readers, viewers, and listeners in a way that helps them do the work of being alive in the United States, that helps them do the work of being a citizen. We define a fast-growing population inside the United States to people that may not be familiar with it. And working in Spanish, we help flatten the road for people still on their journeys to being full shareholders in the American experience. So, yeah, at a time when there are fewer full-time working reporters in America, we're experiencing the challenge of diversifying a shrinking business. It's really hard. And we're also handling those other jobs, as Vanessa mentioned, and we're trying to be bridges and explainers and definers and keep people able to put one foot in front of the other in a country that's getting more complex by the day. So it's a big job. We're up to it, but it's a big job.
Ray, I keep thinking about, your legendary career and just your experience as an NAHJ member, and I wonder if there are some, memories of like kind of those early days for you in NAHJ and what that meant for you.
I was a member of CCNMA and living in Los Angeles before I joined the fledgling organization NAHJ. And it was at that point in my career, in my 20s, early on, I was the only, or one of the only, every place I worked. And the nice thing about being an NAHJ was there were people who were going through that in their newsrooms all across the country. And when you got to talk to each other, you could compare notes, you could compare challenges, and sometimes just relax in each other's company and remind each other that the struggle was worth it, that we had to keep on pushing and moving forward, giving each other intelligence about the business itself and also about coverage and about tricks of the trade. So NAHJ has been valuable to me over the years on all those different levels. Sometimes just a respite from the war. You step back from the newsroom for a couple of days and you think you've really had it, and you get to be around people who are facing the same challenges and understand what you're going through.
It brings me back a bit to my first NAHJ convention. And this was back in June 2005 in Fort Lauderdale.
I was afraid the date you were going to give was going to start with a two. Make me feel, but go ahead.
Okay, well, at the time, I was 23 years old. I was working at the St. Pete Times as a local, news fellow. It was like a 1-year fellowship. And, I'm originally like from California, and I had spent some time in the Northeast. So being in Florida, it wasn't as easy for me. It was humid. I was finding little lizards in my apartment. At that point in life, thinking like, what's my next step? How valuable am I to journalism? Like, where am I going from here? And as soon as I made it to that career fair and started, talking to people, I remember thinking I did have something special. They were genuinely interested in what I had to bring to them. They were looking at my stories. I wasn't the only, there were Latinos everywhere. And I remember the last booth I went to during that career fair was the Hartford Courant. And I'm not sure why I picked them last, but they were the last ones I went to. And I met a fantastic person, Helen Ubiñas, who was a columnist at the Hartford Courant. And now she's a columnist at the Philadelphia Inquirer. And she took, she was looking through my stuff, and, she liked what she saw, and we just kind of clicked, I clicked with Helen, and I clicked with the other editor that was there from the Current. And up until this point, I had never even thought about Hartford, Connecticut. It wasn't in my brain. But it was because of that convention, of meeting Helen and meeting them, that they then invited me to like some of the social gatherings later that day. And I had the best time. And Ray, when you say like needing that respite, it was one of the best times of my life at a time when I needed it most. And fast forward, 5 months later, I was living in Hartford, Connecticut for my first, non-internship, non-fellowship kind of job. I became a local news reporter at the Hartford Courant. And I thought, hey, I'm going to be here for a couple of years. Then I'm going to, move on to another newspaper. And, I'm still here, Hartford, Connecticut, about 18 years later or so. And it's not an understatement or an overstatement that NHJ changed the trajectory of my life because I went to that convention.
Between setbacks in the American economy, the Great Recession, the technological revolution inside our business, what I think of the organization as being about and being for changed along with the realities that we had to deal with. There have been meetings over the years where we've talked really seriously about the future of the organization, whether we could still keep our bills paid and continue to exist, and for what, whether we could continue to do the educative and training programs that had been like at the cornerstone of the founding of the organization. And here we are in 2024, looking at a business that is fighting for its life, as a public that needs news as much as ever is also more and more convinced it can do without it. And in that paradoxical, tense space of a business that's absolutely essential and at the same time being ignored by larger and larger portions of the audience, we are standing up for a different set of principles about our right to be in this country and what the rules are and what our cultural space is, whether we will be permanent foreigners or allowed to become as American as anybody else. I mean, there's a lot of big, heavy questions that you didn't naturally bring up at job fairs or when you were circulating your resume in your 20s. But now we really are talking about being shoulder to shoulder with our colleagues across the industry in fighting for news as an idea and news as a business where you can, make a living and pay your bills and raise your family. So, if anything, we're more essential than ever, and the challenges are bigger than ever. Even as, if I think about, going to the conventions that I went to in, 86, 87, if you would have asked me about 45 years from now, what kind of shape are we going to be in? I never could have imagined this world with huge layoffs, with so much content being created by fewer people. It is a remarkable transformation, not always one that we've done elegantly or well, but the essentiality of us as a pool of workers has never been greater. And I hope our industry realizes that.
I completely agree, Ray. And there's no more, there's such an important time now to be in this industry, but it's hard. When we think about, how can we support that talent pipeline, which sounds like so like corporate, but really we're thinking about how can we bring more Latinos into the fold and support them and help them achieve their dreams, because it is essential that we have more representation in our industry. I think about what can, how NAHJ has helped in this regard, how our regional chapters, our local chapters are helping. Our New England chapter of the NAHJ, and I serve on the board currently, we co-sponsor, co-organize what we call the Unified Career Summit in Boston past couple of years, and that has been sort of co-organized with the other affinity groups in the region. And that's an example of bringing in and allowing, early career journalists to find sort of one-on-one mentorship at this summit with professional journalists in our field, sharing tips, taking a look at resumes, listening to recruiters about what it could take to help them stand out in this market. But that's just one example. I mean, we need a whole swell of support because, like you said, Ray, I mean, now it's such an important time. It's critical. I mean, people are challenging our right to exist as journalists. And more than ever, with how our demographics are changing, we need more Latino journalists in the fold to tell these stories, because it's not just a matter of, for some people, checking a box in terms of a diversity in newsrooms. It's never been about that. It's been about the accuracy and the strength of our storytelling and our news when we have a diversity of perspectives and people working out of our newsrooms.
With the twin challenges of COVID and the controversies around immigration, it's a time for us to shine. And we saw as more and more Latinos were working in professions and in industries where they were defined as essential workers and doing low-paid, dangerous work, I thought, oh, maybe this is a breakthrough moment where people are going to realize the essential nature of the work we do in society. Not so much. Didn't turn out fully that way. As soon as we could forget that we were getting sick and dying by the thousands, we forgot and put it in the past. But now with people showing up from around the world at our southern border, our members are doing phenomenal work, not only at the border itself, but in the sending countries where people are coming from, trying to understand the lives they're living and why they get to the point where they are so desperate that they think anything's better than this, and they start heading north and west. We're needed more than ever. We're as important as ever, and NAHJ is our voice.
Hey, Ray, do you have any advice for NAHJ for the next 40 years?
Well, gee, if one of our members could become rich enough to then create an endowment, but that doesn't look like it's happening. But it would be great if we had money that was being thrown off, so that we didn't have to beg for it constantly. And in fact, take money from the kinds of places that we cover, as part of the way that we do the essential work of training, retention, education, and lobbying for our business. It's always been a little bit of a straddle, diversifying that income stream. It's tough. I wish we didn't have to worry about money as much as we do as an organization.
You're absolutely right. We need that sustainability, like we do in our newsrooms, like we do in our households. We need that sustainability for NAHJ because how important it is.
You know, people sometimes oversimplify how easy it is to figure out a public media that's relevant, necessary for later in the 21st century. It is really one of the hardest questions in the American news business right now.
There are lots of challenges. I agree with everything Ray has said. And I am also a practical optimist. I am so energized about the future of public media. I'm not, half glass full person, but honestly, when I think about the people I work with every day at a station at Connecticut Public, when I think about the collaboration we do through the New England News Collaborative as one example of a regional hub of stations working together to share best practices, to share around innovation and digital, I see sort of a pathway toward the future that is centered around collaboration.
There's that old cliche about having to dance with the one that brung you. We have to serve existing audiences and also figure out the audience of 2040. And doing that when you're flush with cash is one job. It's still hard, but you've got the resources to build that bridge. We do it on a prayer and spit and baling wire, and we do it, and still we do it. And it's that sense of mission that Vanessa mentioned that's the secret ingredient. It's going to make it work.
Hey guys, hey, thank you very much. This is fantastic. I hope and I am sure that the folks who are listening and watching this are going to gain a lot of insight about our state of play in this business.
Thank you so much.
Great to be with you.
Thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you in Hollywood.